Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody's doing well. And in today's video I'm just going to do a little demonstration of the 24 volt power functionality available on these process calibrators that I have here, the SG-004A and the SG-003A and the Mr. Signal. Both work pretty much the same way as each other, and they have two options for providing 24 volts, whereas the LB02 sat over here at the end, that just has the one facility for providing 24 volts, which is really just to provide power to a loop powered transmitter and not an auxiliary DC supply. So what we have here is our new temperature puck that's working all okay. I'm supplying 24 volts from the Regal power supply over here, and spin back, and if we look at the actual display, if we can get the light out of it, we are on 0 here. If I take, this is a 0 to 200 degrees C temperature puck now, and if I go up to PT100, go up to 100, so 0 to 10 volts output, we have 4.99, which is in spec, and if I take it to 200 we should get 10 volts or thereabouts, 9.99 there. So again, we're within specification, no problems. So what I'm just going to do is pull forward the, take it back down to 0, bring up the SG-003A there, and again try and keep the light out of it. So this is the first way of doing it. I go to the function key at the bottom here and output, and along my tabs here, hopefully you can see we've got 24 volts right at the end. So we push along here and go to 24 volts, and we select that, and now our output has been set to 24 volts loop. Hopefully you can see that in the corner there, and the output display here has turned to a milliamp meter. Now the two jacks you'll be using will be the COM and the output on there. So what we'll do is I'll take our 24 volts from our power supply and we'll just put that straight into the COM and the out, and put them in there, and then we switch on, and you can see we go to 17.6 milliamps. So we'll just put him down to the side, and we'll go back to our SG-004A here, hopefully, and we'll go up to 100, and you can see we've got 4.95, so it's lower than what we had before, and it's actual fact out of spec it should be 4.98 minimum. Again, go up to 10 volts output, or 200 degrees C in 10 volts output I should say. We're 9.98, 9.97, we are just within specification. 9.97 is just below, but 9.98 would be within spec. So I'm not actually getting the full output voltage when I'm using this loop power function built into these units. We've got our meter running on the background here, and if I go onto the power supply terminals that we've set up, and there you can see I'm actually only getting out 20.6 volts. We've not got a full 24 volts out, which is kind of strange because from the previous video we know that there's a 15 volt voltage regulator inside these temperature pucks here. And that 15 volt regulator has a specification of 16.7 volts to 30 volts input voltage. So we've quite clearly got that, but we appear to be affecting the output on these temperature pucks. And if I just take out the power supply and return it to the Regal, so now we've done that, you can see we've popped back up to 9.99 volts. I'll start to wind down the voltage on the Regal, and we can just see what happens when it changes. It started to drop a little bit already, and we're on 23.5 volts. So now we're on 22 volts, and we're still pretty much okay. We're down to 21 volts, and we're still okay. And there you see we dropped off. We're at 20.5 volts. Just swing him around there so you can see 20.5 volts on the Regal supply, and you can see the output has dropped off of this and it's out of specification. So slightly strange with that, but it means that you can't really use this loop power function for these auxiliary powered temperature pucks. You can use it perfectly well for loop powered, and I'll demonstrate that at the end of the video just so you get an idea of how that's done. But we'll go back to our SG-003A and try and get him in there. So again, now if I go back to our 24 volt functionality, you can see underneath here there is a use 24 volts and a use to keep. So what I'm going to do is select the, not that one, is select the use 24 volts, and what that will do is put a separate auxiliary power supply out. However, what you, instead of using the out and the COM, you'll need to switch this to the in, which is plus 24 volts output there. You can see there, hopefully. Maybe, maybe not. The use to keep function underneath, if I set this up with use 24 volts and I power the unit down, it will default back to the loop power function, and this will be off when you power it back up again. So, but if you select use to keep, that will retain it as the default function. So if you, even if you power this down and power it back up again, you will still have 24 volts output on those two jacks instead of it defaulting back to the loop power function. So we'll come back out again a little bit. We are, if we go back to our SG-004A here, you can see that we are powered up again, and I can go down through my range, 5 volts for 100 and 0. We are 0 again, and then back up to 200, and we got our 10 volts, and we're in spec 9.98. If I just push them out of the way, and we can zoom out so we can get the meter back into the display there. And if we go on our supply lead again, you can see that this time we now do have 24 volts on the actual meter there. So that's all up and running, all okay. And that's how you use the basic 24 volts functionality on these units. So with that being able to supply 24 volts to power this, that got me wondering if I could test a temperature transmitter like this out purely and simply with just one of these units being able to supply both the 24 volts, the PT100 signal, and measure the voltage output coming back out of the temperature transmitter. Now to do that, I do have to reconfigure the wiring a little bit. So our configuration at the moment is that our input to our temperature transmitter is coming from the output here, plus and minus, and the voltage coming back out of the transmitter is being measured on our input, again plus and minus on those two jacks. So to reconfigure this to attempt to provide the 24 volts, if I take out our 0 there, that will actually need to go over to the common on this side over here, and then our plus 24 volts will need to go into our negative input there. To configure the unit, if we go in close again so we can hopefully show what's going on, you can see we've got PT100 output at this moment in time. If I go to function and out, I can go to our 24 volt function there. I can set this up so that it uses our 24 volts, go back. Now instead of going back to the full menu, I'm just going to tab across again to our ohms and then go back. So I've now retained PT100 output on our output. And then if I switch on, I should have 24 volts again on our temperature transmitter. And I should be able to go up to, go across there, go to 100, and you can see we are 4.92, and if I go to 200, you can see I'm 9.92. So again, I appear to have this issue about not getting 24 volts into the transmitter, and we can verify that with our meter, which inconveniently turned itself off. We zoom back out, and we put our meter on again, on here. And you can see I do actually have 24.7 volts going into the transmitter, so that does appear to be working, and I appear to be getting a full 24 volts out, but I still can't get the expected output from the transmitter. So not 100% sure what's up with that. I presume it's something to do with that I've commoned out the 0 volts of the PT100 to the 0 volts of the power supply, and it doesn't like that. So it's a bit of a shame, because that would have been a really good bit of functionality if I could have tested one of these temperature transmitters solely with using one of these units being able to supply everything. As it happens, I can't. I can use If I've got a second one of these units, you can use that to provide the 24 volts, but you have to be able to keep the 24 volts isolated from the PT100 input. So that's that. Not worked quite as well as I expected it would have, but these things happen sometimes. What I'll just do is pull this out of the way and I'll just show the loop functionality working on one of these temperature transmitters. So I've just set this up for a quick demonstration of the loop power function on these instruments here. You can see I have set up the LB02 to 24 volt loop power. Very simple on this device. You just hit the 24 volt function there and it sends it to the loop power function, and that's feeding in one side of my temperature transmitter here. My PT100 from this side is coming out of the SG-003A here. You do have to have this turned on. If I turn this off, you see we can drop to 3.4 milliamps, which is wrong. It should be 4 to 20 milliamps on this. So I have to force in the 0 degrees C, and then I'll get my 4.04 milliamps coming out there, which is within spec. If I go up to 100 degrees C, I should get 12 milliamps, which is about 50% on this 4 to 20 milliamp loop. As you can see, we've got there. And finally, up to 200 degrees C, I should get the full 20 milliamps out, which we're getting 20.05. So dead easy to use a loop powered transmitter with this. As with the auxiliary powered one I had previously, you do have to use 2 units to get the full measurement capability. I couldn't do it with just this SG-004A here, no matter what configuration I tried. The reading coming out of the temperature puck was always wrong. Again, you would be shorting out the commons of the PT100 input and the supply line there, measurement functionality. So I presume it's that upsets these and means you can't use one of these units on its own to carry out the testing on these temperature pucks. So that'll be the end of this video on the 24 volt functionality of these process calibrator units. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.